Be'ezah Hashem Yisbarach, we are very excited to begin a new volume on Lekut Sichos, Chelek Chav Daled, the Sichos on Chumash Devarim, and we're learning today the first Sicha on Parshas Devarim, right at the beginning on page 1. The Shir today is being learned, Lili Nishmas, Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. Oifim Pasik, Be'eva Yarden, Be'eretz Moav, Hoyel Moshe Be'eretz HaTorah Zeis Leimar. The Yidden was standing right on the outside of Eretz Yisrael, on the other side of the Yarden. So there, Moshe Rabbeinu explained all of the Torah. What does it mean he explained? Zogen Hazal, so as Chazal tell us, as B'shivim Loshen Fishel, that Moshe Rabbeinu translated Torah and explained it to them in 70 languages. And similar, Fahren began them Yarden, before Yidden crossed the Yarden, had Moshe angesagt, as Vahoya, Ba'avrechem es Yarden v'goyme. So Moshe Rabbeinu commands Yidden that it will be when you will cross the Yarden, that you should write all the words of the Torah on these rocks, and it should be Ber Hetiv. So here as well, Zogen Razal. So Chazal tell us what does Ber Hetiv mean. As Ber Hetiv meint, dass man soll das schreiben b'shivim Loshen. That the Torah should be written on these rocks in 70 languages. So twice we see here that the Torah is being translated into all languages. In Masechta Seifrim learn it. In Masechta Seifrim you learn the following story. Maise beheis keinem shekosvu letalmei hamelech HaTorah Yevonis. There was the story with the 5 elders that wrote the Torah for Talmei HaMelech, and they translated it into Yevonis, Greek. And this day was very difficult for Yidden, like the day that the Egel, the golden calf, was made. Because the Torah couldn't properly be translated, all the words, they couldn't properly translate them. Isn't it move on? So the question here on what it says in Masechta Seifrim is, from them was Moshe Pirshalahem, the Torah b'shivim Loshen. From the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu did translate the Torah in 70 languages. Und nachme, von dem Tzivui v'chasafta alavonim goyim bar hetev bayin Loshen. Then the mitzvah they had to write the Torah on the rocks in all 70 languages is mochach, so it's clear as is don dem amayle v'teyeles, that there's something positive and there's a big advantage in the translation of Torah. Hein, wie sagt man, as the Tirgum, the Loshen Yevonis, has got an Inyan Kosher und Kosher b'Yoseh. So how is it possible that it says here that the day that the Torah is being translated into Greek is a very, very difficult time, and the most difficult, like the day that the Egel was made? Nachmer Tamua. Additionally, what it's hard to understand here is, even more, is the Tam Defon. The reason that it says here why this is such a difficult day. Because it was impossible to properly translate Torah. The question is, wie bald das Torah ist doch schon von früher übergesetzt geworden in alle 7 Loshen Kanal. If Torah was already once before translated in all 70 languages, so it was done already. So it must have been possible. So why now was it so difficult to translate the Torah? So the Rebbe says it would be very difficult to suggest the following. As in Masechta Seifrim wird gemeint an Inyan Kosher, was es verbunden bloß mit dem Targum auf Loshen Yevonis. That the difficulty here is specifically the translation into Yevonis, Greek. Und nicht mit die andere von der Shivim Loshen. But it doesn't refer to the others of the 70 languages. So the Torah B'chlal to be translated is a positive thing. But specifically in Yevonis, that's the issue. So we can't say this because Varum, Aleph number 1, the Shivim Loshen, and Falach Torah is Shainis Parish geworden, Zenen Koyel Oich Loshen Yevonis. Because the 70 languages that the Torah was once before already translated into includes Yevonis as well. And on the other hand, another question here would be from Stimas Aloshen in Masechta Seifrim, Shalehoisa HaTorah Yechola Lihitargim Chulu, that Torah cannot be translated. Is mashma as das was the Torah cannot be targum werden kol tzarka. The fact that Torah cannot be translated properly, wird damit gemeint the targum in jeden Loshen. This refers to translating Torah in every or any language. Gimel, another question here is v'adarabah. If we're going to say that the issue is dafka with Yevonis, then the truth is that the opposite is true. We find elsewhere in Gemara as Loshen Yevonis hatten dem gar a meile legabi shara l'shainis. Yevonis has an advantage translating Torah to this language more than other languages. Warum ledas Rab Shimon ben Gamliel? And azay is euch da halacha, because the opinion of Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, which is also the halacha, darf man schreiben die Svarim Tanakh nor b'Lashon HaKodesh. The Svarim of Tanakh should be written only in Lashon Kodesh, nit in Kenan de Lashon, not in any other language. Chutz from Yavanis. Besides, if it's being written in Greek, then the Torah could be translated into Yavanis. So we're talking about the actual scroll, the actual Sefer Torah. When you write an actual Sefer Torah, so then the only translation should be into Yavanis. So you see that Adarabah, Yavanis is the best language to translate Torah in. Dalit, additionally, noch mehr, steht in Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi, where it talks about the story, it clearly says, Botku umatzu she'ena Torah yechola lihitargim kol tzarka, Ella Yavanis. The only language that the Torah could be translated into properly is Yavanis. So you can't say that the issue here with this Canaan that translated the Torah was the fact that they translated it into Yavanis. Now the Iker to me is in them, was die Breis Anal Masechta Seferim sagt, V'ha yayim koshel Yisrael ki yayim shenas egel. The main question, and I wonder that there is here in this subject, is how could the Braisa say that the day that the Torah was translated and it couldn't properly be translated should be as difficult as the day that the Egel was made? How is it possible to say, as to leave them was the Torah, can it meturgem werden, called tzarka, just because the Torah cannot be fully translated, is das if a viel kasher shlili. This is so difficult and so negative, because das is bedoime zu dem Tag uzman von asiyas egel, that this could be compared to the day that the egel was made. So even if we're going to say that there's an issue here with lashon Yavanis, but to say at kedei kach that it's mamish like the day that the egel was made, that's the main question here. So here in Sif Beis, there's another example where we find in Chazal the same expression in the Gemara. This expression, like the day that the egel was made. So the Gemara there says, as Oster hayim, that there was on that day, Hillel, Kofuf, v'yoshev l'fnei Shammai. So the Gemara there says the story about an argument that was between Hillel and Shammai, and the argument got very intense, and they stuck a sword into the door of the Besmedrash, and they didn't allow anyone to leave. And they took a count, and this caused that the students of Shammai were more than the students of Hillel, and they passed like Shammai in that day. And regarding this, the Gemara says, Hillel was subdued and sitting in front of Shammai like one of his students. And this was a difficult day for the Yidden, like the day the Egel was made. Here as well, this demands explanation. How could this day be so difficult for Yidden compared to the day that the Egel was made? Rashi is mefarish. Now Rashi explains kosher. Why is it so difficult for Yidden? Because Hillel is the leader of the Yidden and he was humble. What is Rashi saying with this? Isn't it move on? So what Rashi says here is not understood. Seemingly is nor the erste prat lefische Hillel nasi a time for was das is given kosher. Just this that Rashi says that Hillel was a nasi, that's the reason why this is a difficult day. Asayin de nasi zal Hillel sein kof of Yeshul lefnei Shammai ke'echad min talmidim. The fact that the nasi has to sit subdued like one of the students in front of Shammai, that is a difficult day for Klal Yisrael. Aber the zweite Prat is doch gar Adarabbe. The second detail Rashi brings, that Hillel was humble. So on the contrary, Atan v'sibbe, this itself is a reason and a cause, v'yazeh Hillel mitzidai, hat yege ken sein koffer v'chulu. That because of his nature and because of his humility, he should be able to be subdued. Afal pi, as there is given a nasi. While he was a nasi, but still nevertheless, while there is given an anderson, because he was very humble. So how is that a reason for why this day is difficult? So there are those mefarshim that say, them Pirish and Rashi, lefishe ba'at tu behillel, shahayin nasi v'amvisen. That what Rashi means to say is that they were bayit. They rebelled, or they sort of kicked, and they did not pay attention to the greatness of Hillel, which was both a nasi and humble. What does this mean? That it's the Rashi here is telling you how great Hillel was, and nevertheless they still rebelled against him. And this would explain the similarity to the day that the Yidden made the Egel. That they also rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu, which was both their leader and very humble. And instead they said, Nasa lanu elikim asher yelchu lefaneinu. Let's appoint another God that will go ahead of us. So that's the comparison here. The similar happened to Hillel when they were Bayit and Hillel. This is not a sufficient explanation to explain why this is compared to the day that the Egel was made. Even after we see the comparison of this, that they rebelled against Hillel, similar to what happened by the Egel, that they rebelled against Moshe, is the Chabadinu Achayme. However, what was the real severity of this day that the Egel was made? It wasn't really the rebellion against Moshe, as severe and as difficult as this may be, nor the chet von Avodah Zarah Rachmana litzlan. The main issue over here was the fact that this was the day the Egel they served Avodah Zarah. That's the main thing here about the Egel. And in that sense, there is nothing unique over here in the story about Hillel that can be compared to this day that they made the Egel. The Rebbe continues here in Sif Gimel to explain that we have to look into the exact, precise words that Chazal use here, and that's the key to understand what this comparison to the day that the Egel was made is. Let's see the exact words that it says in both of these statements of Chazal, in Masechta Seifrim and in Masechta Shabbos. It's like the day that the Egel was made on it. Unit kasiyas egel. It does not say that what happened is compared to the actual creation of or the making of the egel, or kechet egel, like the sin of the egel, v'chayetze b'zeh, or any similar language. It says the day that the egel was made. Why? If we're trying to compare it to the actual chet egel itself, what's the emphasis of the day? Now, but Pashtos is the yom avedas ha'egel. Now, simply the day that the Yidden actually went and served the Egel as an Avodah Zarah, given lemachras yom asiyas Egel. This was the day later, the day following that they made the Egel. As the pasuk says, as b'yom u'la'achre asiyas Egel, on the day and following after they made the Egel, hat Aaron gesagt, Chag l'Hashem machar. Again, on the day, on that very day after they made the Egel, so Aaron tells to the Yidden, let's hold off and we'll celebrate with Hashem tomorrow. His intention was to push them off and to try to delay this. He was confident in the Eibishter that Moshe is going to come and they'll serve the Eibishter instead of serving the Egel. So on this day itself, when they made the Egel, they didn't actually serve the Egel as an Avodah Zarah. The primary sin of the Egel only came the next morning. They got up early and they brought the sacrifices here for this Egel. So now we understand when it says here in the Gemara the expression, the day that the Egel was made, meant, what are Chazal saying with this term? The hardkeit, koishi, the difficulty, consists here, is not with the very fact that they made this Egel. Warum euch nachdem hat gekannt sein, wie Aaron hat gesagt, dem Chag l'Hashem machar, yavdu as a makim. Because as Aaron said, the making of the Egel itself, even though that was a problem, but that itself not necessarily would lead to anything negative. It's possible that only on the next day would they come and Moshe Rabbeinu would be there and they would be serving the Eibishter and not the Egel. Not in them was das yom shenase by Egel. Rather, the main issue over here was that this is the day that they made the Egel. What does this mean? Atog verbunden nor mit dem Egel, meaning that this is a day that's connected and dedicated just to one thing, to creating this Egel. Nit in yoni amokim, not focusing on matters related to the Eibishter. Right? That's the Hadgosh of Chazal, not the very creation of the Egel itself. That's not the issue. And also the serving of the Egel, which took place the next day, that did not yet take place on this day. Rather, the fact that they created something today, they were focused on creating something which is not connected to the Eibishter. And then on the following day leads to what happens, that's the issue. The Meile is a Tag von Hachane zu der Chet von Dienen dem Egel la'achas man, auf morgen. The issue here is that on today's day, they made the Egel, they prepared something which after time, the next day, it led to what it led to, that they served the Egel. That's what Chazal is saying, Kiyoim, the day that leads to something that comes out of this on the next day, which is negative. So now, based on this diuk, we could understand that this is also something that happened here when they translated the Torah for Talmud. Similar is also regarding the translation of the Torah that these Zekanim wrote for Talmud HaMelech, they translated for him in Yavanis. The Pirish in Masechta Seifrim. So the meaning, what it says here in Masechta Seifrim, to lehoisa hatayra yechayla lehitargim kol tzarka, that they couldn't translate Torah properly, meant what it means is as follows: a genoye wertliche Übersetzung in dem Seide Mukte Mu'ocher wie steht in Torah b'lashon hakodesh is ena Torah yechayla lehitargim. An exact translation where you keep the order of the words just as they are in Lashon Kodesh, in whatever language you're translating it into, that you keep a precise translation with the same order of the words, that's impossible. On the Chesara Bashtet in them. Now, what's the problem with this? Was das geht an art? This allows a possibility as from them that a mistake could be made by using this translation. It could lead later to a mistake. So even if the translation is good, and right now it's done properly, however, because it's not exactly in the same order, word for word, as it is in Hebrew, it's possible that it should lead later to a mistake. And that is, B'shas HaGoy, Talmud HaMelech, that nachdem learned the Torah in Lashon Yavam, wie sie es meturigem b'diuk kol tzarka. When a guy learns the Torah, and he learns it in Greek, as it is translated as best possible, is meglech, soll nicht verstehen, dem richtigen Pirish, bekam es beteiligt. It's possible that he shouldn't understand the proper meaning in certain places in Torah, as it's described over there. Und noch mehr, and even more so, wird verstehen, heipach von der Kavana mitis. He might even understand the exact opposite of what the intention of the words are. The fargefinimi. So therefore we find, as b'shas the ayin based kainim of metargiv and the Torah for Talmud HaMelech, when they did actually translate the Torah for Talmud, is nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'leiv kol echad ve'echad. The Eibishter gave all the zekanim there the same idea, Eitza, this the advice over here, what should they do about this? V'yiskimu kulan l'dei achas. They all came to the same conclusion, and they made on Yud Gimel Devarim shinuba. They had to make 13 changes in the translation of the Torah so that it should not be translated 100%, which could lead to a mistake. They did not translate Torah 100% verbatim, word for word, because that could lead to a mistake. Instead, they made certain changes, like Bereshis Bada Lekim. They wrote the Lekim Bada Bereshis. They translated in different order in order that it shouldn't lead to a mistake. So what do we understand from all of this? Und in dem besteht der Vergleich Hanal in Masechta Seifrim, v'haya hayom kosher liYisrael ki yom shenasa ba'egel. Therefore it says that this day was difficult for Yidden like the day that the egel was made on it. Kishem v'the yom shenasa ba'egel is given kosher, just like the day the egel was made. It was a difficult day. Weil is given the achone as lemochrosai is gekommen dem dienen dem egel. What was this day? This day was the fact that they focused on preparing and creating this egel, that then on that day, nothing happened. Adarabba, Aaron had a plan that it'll be used in the positive. But it ended up being a preparation. They were focused on something not connected to the Eibishter, preparing to the egel that they then serve tomorrow. Al derech zeh is the yain was mahat metargen given the Torah liYavanis. Similar, when they translated the Torah into Yavanis, a yain kosher liYisrael. It's difficult to the Yidden in the same vein, weil das kann bringen zu Pirish HaTorah sheloi kedeboi und heipach kavana kanal, because this could lead to interpreting Torah, understanding Torah not 100% properly, and even the opposite of what the intention of Torah is. So therefore, this is considered to be a day which is difficult, similar to the difficulty of the day that they actually made the egel. Okay, so now we could give the same pshat also in Sifeye regarding what the Gemara says, regarding the story with Shammai and Hillel. Similar to this, we can say regarding this day that Hillel was subdued and sitting like a student in front of Shammai. Was mademot geizegeben vidas Shammai. The fact that on that day they decreed all the decrees the Gemara says there, like Shammai said, is nit azik kosher. That in itself is not so difficult. Vadim sof is the chasik le Hillel Shammai, as it says there in the Gemara. Hillel was quiet and he accepted Shammai's opinion. And le Omad b'machlakusay. Rashi there says Hillel did not keep his opinion, arguing with Shammai. The says that in is given al pi halacha. So when they passed them like Shammai, it was all according to the rules of Torah. That in this case the halacha should be like Shammai. So this itself is not yet anything negative. So what's the main difficulty here? Consists of the fact that can bring it. This could lead as euch später soll man pasken in die halachas ke Shammai. That even regarding other arguments between Hillel and Shammai or Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, you can end up paskening like Beis Shammai. Heipach klalei halacha v'sus l'dairis, which is the opposite of the rule of the way halacha should be in all generations. As Beis Shammai, b'makim Beis Hillel ein a mishnah. The opinion of Beis Shammai, when you have the opinion of Beis Hillel, not only is it not accepted, but it's like not even in the mishnah there. It doesn't have any credibility at all. So that what it may lead to in the future, that you could continue paskening like Beis Shammai, that was the issue on this day. Similar to the Egel, that what it leads on the next day. Yeshleimar, as das is the kavana from Pirush Rashi, and this is what Rashi means when he says, Fishel Hillel, Nasi ve'anvisen. When Rashi points out the fact that Hillel was not only the Nasi, but he was also humble. How is the Hillel's humility relevant here? Rashi is masber the minyan hakoishish bezet. With this, Rashi explains to us what's so difficult about this day. Halacha ke Beis Hillel, the fact that the rule is that we pass like Beis Hillel is mitzadi tzvei tchunas. It's because of these two character traits or these two details here. Nasi v'anvesen. What are they? The meira halacha b'chlal is the nasi afilu legabe dem av bezdin. Generally, we pass like the nasi, the leader of the Yidden, and even if there's an argument between the nasi and the Av Bezdin, the head of the Bezdin, we pasken like the Nasi. Und das ist given verkehrt. Shammai is doch given der Av Bezdin. Shammai was the head of the Bezdin and Hillel was the Nasi. And here the halacha was like Shammai and not like the Av Bezdin. Und anwissen, wie the Gemara sagt, as the Gemara tells us, the Gabe Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'chlal. Why is it when it comes to Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in general, do we pasken like Beis Hillel as mipnei ma zocha Beis Hillel l'kvay halacha k'maisa? Why did Hillel merit that we pasken like them? Because Hillel, they were humble and they accepted any embarrassment. They didn't answer back. They didn't have that strength and that harshness and so on. They were just very quiet and humble for themselves. Or you'll touch these words precisely. Noichen va'aluvim. The point of here is the humility. So Rashi is quoting these two details of Nasi and Anvesen to point out what the problem is. That because Hillel has these two character traits and the halacha is supposed to be like him, the fact that on this day we're paskening like Shammai is a problem for the future, that it may lead that we should continue paskening like Beis Shammai. So this is the general connection here between the Yom Shenasa B'ya Egel and these two incidents, which is not the problem with this itself, but what it may lead to in the future. However, there's still more to explain here. The Rebbe will take this to a much deeper level. And really one major question that was not answered here yet, that if there is this issue with translating Torah, what it could lead to in the future, so why, when Moshe Rabbeinu translated the Torah, and he commands Yidden to translate the Torah when they come into Eretz Yisrael, why isn't there any issue there? What's the distinction between that and this case over here? Okay, so that will be explained there in the Hemshcha de Sicher. Since all matters in Torah are very precise, is move on, so it's understood as der Vergleich von die zwei Inyanim, the comparison of these two things, Targum HaTorah L'Talmei HaMelech, the translation of the Torah, Unoisi Ya'ayoin HaYehillel Kofuf, and the day that Hillel was subdued, to dem Yom Shenasa B'Egel, to this day that the Egel was created, is nicht nur in them, was der Tag ken goyim sein an Inyan, am Ura Biltirati. It's not just in the general sense that this is a day that can cause something or an event negative that would come out of it. Wie the Yom Shenasa B'Egel, as it is with the day that the Egel was made on it. But it's also connected to the content of what this day that the Egel was made represents, and what is the content of the sin of the Egel in general. What is this Aveda of the Egel that we are saying that something similar it's compared to over here on this day of the translation of the Torah, or the day that Hillel was subdued. So here the Rebbe will give us a lengthy explanation to have an understanding of what the Chet Egel consists of. So the explanation here is as follows. It says, Yedua was the Mifarshe Teires and a Meirich B'Negeya the Minyan von Asiyas Egel. So it's known what all the commentaries in Torah speak at length about what exactly happened here when the Yidden made the Egel. As Yidden haben nicht gemeint an Inyan von Avodah Zarah Chas v'Shalom. When Yidden were making this Egel, what they were looking for, what they were demanding, is not a concept of Avodah Zarah, God forbid. Now, blois a manig was al zefirin b'makim Moshe, but v'loi b'makim Hashem. They were looking for a leader that will lead them to take the place of Moshe. They saw that Moshe wasn't returning, but not to take the place of Hashem himself. Ukatanosam b'loshon hakasav, and as they argued, as the pasuk clearly says, Kizeh Moshe ha'ish asher lana meretz Mitzrayim lo yadanim ma'ayla. That Moshe that took us out of Mitzrayim, we don't know what happened to him. Das heißt, so what does this mean? Sie haben gewollt, als soll sein, am Mutze zwischen sie und zwischen dem Eibishten und sie. What they were looking for is to have someone in between, an intermediary between them and the Eibishter. And they based this on the fact that this is the way the Eibishter himself sets it up, l'chayda, seemingly. Because what does it say? Kizeh Moshe ha'ish asher ha'elanu meretz Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu, he's the one that Hashem appointed to come and lead us and take us out of Mitzrayim. Nit der Eibishter allein. The Eibishter himself does not take Yidden out of Mitzrayim, nor durch Moshe als memutze zwischen dem Eibishter and Yidden. But it's all done through Moshe Rabbeinu being the memutze between them and Hashem. And the point here about why there's a need for a memutze, intermediary between Hashem and the Yidden, is as follows. Kedei as a Yid dolamata. In order for a Yid living here below in this physical world, so sein verbunden mit dem Eibishten, should connect to Hashem. Und im Dinim wie es darf zu sein mit alle keiches hanefesh, not just to be connected with simple faith, but to actually bring that connection to the Eibishter in all of the faculties of the person. That his whole entity should be included in this. Euch mit sein Seichel, euch mit seine Gefühlen, his intellect, his emotions. Und as is es, now when is this possible? A person's intellect and emotions, his keiches, are very, very far from being truly connected to Hashem, to godliness. So this is only possible when you can draw down godliness here below in this world. And then it becomes possible for a person to know Hashem. To know, not just to simply believe in Hashem, but actually to know with your intellect about Hashem. In addition to the belief, which is on the level of Hashem, which is absolute simplicity, that does not relate to our reality in this world at all. So to bring down the Eibishter into our world, Leda, to know the Eibishter, so for this you have to draw down godliness and make it close to our existence in this world. So how is this? Elokus ve'izgale zu an ish lamata. Godliness is revealed to a human being, in quotations, here below. An neshama beguf, a soul which is in a body in this world. And the godliness comes and is enclosed and becomes completely unified with a wondrous unity with this ish, with this human being in the world. Biz bedugmas Moshe versus ish ha'alekim. And to the point, as it was by Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's described to be as a ish ha'alekim, one person which is both ish and alekim, because godliness is so unified with his very being. Ish was meken emzen unheren. But this is a human being that you can see and hear, and he's someone that is relatable and is in our reality here in this world. Furthermore, in order to draw down godliness, and yet even further, and it should be sensed and experienced here in this world, in Olam Hazak Gashmi, in the physical world, in all matters of this physical world, so here the people that demanded to create this Egel, so their opinion, their thought process was, as es darf nimshach werden durch a niederere Darge in Olam Hazak, that you have to bring down godliness into some entity which is part of the really low element of the world. Und durch den wird es haben mehr Wirkung in Welt und in Welt. This will have more of an impact and more of an impact in the actual existence of the reality of this world. Not only through Moshe Rabbeinu being a human being and an Ish Elakim, but to bring it down into the lowest elements of the world. That is what their demand was. Va'al derech, And in their thought process, similar as it was later, as the Rebishter had geheißen, v'asil im Mikdash, from Kesef v'zav v'chulu, to build the base of Mikdash, or the Mishkan, from gold, silver, and so on, v'shachanti b'seichem. And the Rebishter dwells in the physical items that the base of Mikdash, or the Mishkan, is built of. Was ikroi is der Oren u'shnei kruvim, and the main primary presence of the Shechina is in the Oren and where the two kruvim are. Was la'ydeizez given ashras ha'shechina tzvishi Yidden. This brought the dwelling of the Shechina amongst Yidden. V'dibarti mi'itcha me'ala kapayres mi'bein shnei kruvim asher al arein. That's the place from where the voice of Hashem comes out to speak to Moshe Rabbeinu from between these two kruvim. So this is what the Yidden's idea about the creating the Egel was. They actually looked at the concept of what they saw Moshe Rabbeinu represents, bringing Elokus down to the world, and they said that if so, we should create something similar, or actually even more effective, by the Egel. This is the explanation for what it says in the Medrash, as the Chet Egel is gekommen mitzadem, was b'shas matan Teire. It came as a result that when the Eibishter came down at Matan Teire, haben die Yidden gesehen, wie der Eibishter ist jedet mit dem Merkava. The Eibishter comes down with the whole entire holy chariot. Und sie haben Shemit gewähnt, echot mehem. And they, so to speak, pulled out and disconnected one of the Merkava from the Eibishter here in this world, the Pnei Shor Sheb Merkava, the face of the ox of Hashem's Merkava, and they brought this power down into this world. Sie haben gewollt, da lemata, azach fun mata, they wanted to have, just like they saw, that the expression and the revelation of the Eibishter, spiritually, in the Ruchnisdige world, is through the Meiser Merkava, so too, in the physical worlds below, the expression of the Eibishter should come down through something here, in our reality, in this world, which is the Shor, or an Egel, physically in our world, similar to the way it is Lamaila. Now, even after the Yidden created the Egel, before they served the Egel, hat Aaron gesagt, Chag LaShem Mocher, that the celebration will be for the Eibishter tomorrow. As von dem can Ares kommen aniloi. Even after all this that the Yidden did, which was actually a mistake, as the Rebbe will soon point out, where exactly the Yidden went wrong with their whole thought process of bringing the Eibishter down. But at this point, when the Yidden created this Egel, Aaron's idea was that then this is only going to lead to celebrating with the Eibishter tomorrow on an even greater level. As von dem kann kommen, an advantage will come out of this Egel created here. As Moshe wird kommen, because Moshe will return. Wird bei Yidden is gale werden, wie der Inyan Egel is kemetzias nit. Moshe will come, and this will reveal the mistake that Yidden had with their whole idea of utilizing an Egel to bring down godliness on the world, that really this is a mistake, and this whole Egel is no entity at all, and has no significance at all. Now, bepashtus, on a very simple level, what Aaron Kain was hoping for is, wenn es hot nit gewend, der vayashkimu, hasat nezirzam kedei sheyechtu. If they would not wake up early in the morning, which the Satan came and woke them up early, that they should sin early on. What nit gewend de vayachtu, they wouldn't have sinned, nor adarabbe. On the contrary, Moshe would verbrennt der Egel b'mayim v'heskem kol b'nei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu would come and burn the Egel in front of him with the agreement of all Yidden. Upshite, as es what melachatchilin had given avedes Egel. Obviously, there wouldn't be any serving of the Egel at all. Now, what would be the big mile that would come out of here? Here, if Moshe Rabbeinu would come, then he would reveal to Yidden the truth of how you're actually supposed to bring the Eibishter down into this world. Und es wird sich ausdrücken, achtes Hashem noch mehr. Now through this, by burning this Egel, this would express the true unity of Hashem even more as Ein Od Milvado. To what extent the Ein Od Milvado is true, that there's nothing other than Hashem himself, that even here, this idea that Yidden had to create a mamutza, to create this Egel that will bring down the Eibishter, that's also a problem, because it's a contradiction to Ein Od Milvado. So by Yidden creating this Egel, and Moshe Rabbeinu then coming and burning this Egel, this would teach to Yidden and express to what extent the Ein Od Milvado of the Eibishter is, that even this Egel is also a contradiction to the absolute unity of Hashem. And the Rebbe explains this here with Kitzer, und as a mamutze can sein nor Moshe mamutze hamechaber. And an intermediary between Yidden and Hashem cannot be an Egel, a physical item from this world. Rather, it could only be Moshe Rabbeinu himself, which is a memutze that connects Yidden to the Eibishter. A memutze that's completely selfless, has no entity of his own, and all he does is he reveals who the essence of Yidden are and what the essence of the Eibishter Yidden are, essence of the Eibishter is, that is, and he brings them together as one. That's a memutza mechaber. It brings out the closeness that they have, the fact that they're one. Unlike, let me just finish reading the paragraph here, was der Eibishter hat ihm geschickt und ihm gemacht für sein Schliach zu Yidden. And this is only possible because Moshe Rabbeinu was sent and he was commanded by the Eibishter to be this messenger to bring Yidden closer to the Eibishter. So to take an entity in this world, on whatever level it may be, even if it's something which is compared to the Ma'aser Merkava and they're taking from the Koyach of Ma'aser Merkava to create this connection to the Eibishter, but that's not a Memutza Mechaber. It's not something that the Eibishter commanded, not something that the Eibishter appointed. And therefore, this Memutza, instead of being an intermediary that brings together, on the contrary, this becomes an intermediary that creates a hefsek, that creates a distance between Yidden and the Eibishter, because you're saying that there's a certain Metzius here that exists and it will then connect you to Hashem. So in other words, there is something other than Hashem himself that has some significance. So the Payol, but because Moshe Rabbeinu did not end up coming, in the Vayash Gimu, is aber von dem Nestaiv geworden, by Kamem Yisrael, what this ended up leading to, by some Yidden, of Morgen dem Chet Egel, the actual sin of the Egel, the Chet von Avodah Zarah, which is the point of Hepech, Achtos Hashem, the opposite of the absolute unity of Hashem that could have and should have been revealed here on this day. So that's the deeper understanding of what the Chet of the Egel is all about. It wasn't kipshuta that they wanted to serve Avodah Zarah, but the very fact that they wanted to create a memutza, and this memutza is not completely bottled to Hashem like Moshe Rabbeinu, so there's something other than the absolute unity of Hashem. That in itself is already a concept of a possibility that there should be a Chet of Avodah Zarah that comes out of it. This now explains the deeper connection here to what the Egel does and how the Rebbe will then explain the connection here to the day that he translated the Torah. Das is der Inyan from Koshe in Yom Shenasa by Egel. So first to explain what does Chazal mean by this expression that there's something difficult about the very day that the Egel is created. Nita Yom She'avdu as Egel. Before you come to the following day when they actually serve the Egel. The Etzem Zach, the very fact, as is all verin, an upgeteilte Metzius, that you can have a separate entity. Even if their point was that they want to utilize this to draw down godliness. But it's a separate entity. It has some feeling of self, of separateness of Hashem. So because it's not a command of Hashem, and Sivi doesn't just mean command, but it means that the Eibishter is connected here. The Eibishter comes down through this. So therefore this can lead to a Chet of Avodah Zarah, an Inyan from Shtei Shriyos, to having two opposite domains, so to speak, where you have the outlook that there's two separate entities that exist in the world, another entity outside of Hashem, God forbid. But when it comes with the command of Hashem, like it is with the Yidden building the Mishkan, and the Eibishter says to build the Aron and the Kapayres, al derech this is given in the Mishkan Aron Kruven Canal, so then what is sensed in the what they're doing here and in the Aron and the Kruven? As herzich demelt on, blois as durch dem geht durch den Dvar Hashem. So over here, the Aron, the Kapayres, is not an entity for itself that has any significance for itself, which the Shechina will then come into this. They are simply just a medium of the Eibishter revealing himself through them. They have absolutely no self involved here. Says Nita kein shum mitzias v'inyan in the zach gufa. There's no entity, there's no significance to this itself. So therefore, such a kind of memutza, which is God appointed and is just fully permeated by the presence of Hashem and by the Eibishter flowing through it, so here it can't lead to any mistake that there are two domains, God forbid. And das is der Teichen ha-Medrash Kanal. And this is the point of what the Medrash is saying here. Der Egel is nishmat geworden von der Pnei Shoyer sheb'Merkava. The Egel that the Yidden created was because they took the Pnei Shoyer of the Merkava and they separated it. This is the Merkava, the holy chariot of the Eibishter above, is the Chelek from the Merkava al Yaina. So there, it's all part of the Eibishter's holy chariot. This is an inyan fun alakus, and is megala alakus. It's all part of godliness, and it reveals and expresses godliness. There is no feeling of any other entity other than this, that it's there to express Hashem in one way or another. Shas, aber das wird nishmat, bazunder, und lamata, but when you separate it and you bring it here below into a different reality, nit via chelek von der Merkava, not as part of the Merkava above, as herzichnit. What this means is that you don't sense here in them, bittel ha-Merkava l'reiche v'leh, the fact that this entire chariot is just a chariot for the one that's riding upon it. This could then lead the next day to the actual sin of the Egel, the sin of the Avodah Zarah that came out. That's the kasha, the yoim shenasa by Egel, the very fact that there's a metzias, which is not godliness. That's what they created on this day. Is this b'shayches zum targum hatayre l'loshen yavam shekosva l'talmei hamelech. Similar to this was what happened when they wrote the Torah for Talmai, and they wrote it in Greek. V'hoya yem koshel Yisrael k'yem shenasa egel. So what's the connection here? Targum HaTorah al yidei Moshe b'shivim loshen. When Moshe Rabbeinu translates the Torah in 70 languages, other than kiyem matzivui v'chasafta al avonim as kol divrei Torah zayis bar hetu b'shivim loshen. We even are fulfilling the mitzvah to write the Torah on the rocks in 70 languages. V'bal das is given zusammen mit Torah wie sie es b'mekoira b'loshen hakodesh. They are writing the translations together with the Torah the way it is in Lashon HaKodesh originally. And additionally, this is coming with the command of Hashem. So here, there was no room for the Torah being understood and interpreted not the way the purpose and the intention of Torah is. Because the translation was done in such a manner that the translation was connected to the original. And you sensed in the translation the godliness that's present and the holiness of the Torah that's in it. Und die Kedushas HaTorah, wie sie ist, b'Lashon HaKodesh, v'nemra mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The other languages were there along with Lashon HaKodesh, and therefore you saw that it's merely a translation of Lashon HaKodesh. That's what was sensed here. Oh, wenn wat mit Tagen gewend die Torah pi drishas Talmei HaMelech, nit al pi tzivui Hashem in Lashon Yavam, when they translated the Torah. And it was not with a mitzvah from the Eibishter. And it was in Lashon Yavam, so now he has the Torah only in Lashon Yavam. Yavam, that is, hat von dem gekent er is kommen an inyan shaloi kedabay. So this could lead to something that's not okay. Anstatt as in Bereishis, bara lekim, soll man lernen, achtos Hashem, that instead of translating the words Bereishis bara lekim, that the Eibishter creates everything, and expressing the unity of Hashem, the remeses, as the truth is, that mentaichin as shtei reshu yisein, v'rishem bara es hasheni. As it says over there, the Gemara, that the mistake would be that you would say that there's two different domains, there's two different powers, and one creates the other. So therefore they have to change the order of these words. And the andere psukim b'Torah, sheshinu l'Talmei HaMelech, and similar to other psukim that they had to change in the translation for Talmai, was in Rubam hat gekent sein an es in es Makim zu a Pirish was bringt a reis heipech achtas Hashem and heipech HaTorah. In most cases, the problem here is that it's a translation that can lead to the opposite of the achtas Hashem and opposite of Torah, which is there only in the Torah itself. So this is the comparison to the Egel, and this is also the answer to why this problem does not exist when the Torah is translated through Moshe Rabbeinu, and you have it together with the original, with Lashon HaKodesh, and it's al pi hatzivi, according to the Eibishter's mitzvah. So now we can take this point and apply it similarly to the story with Hillel and Shammai. So just as this is true regarding the day that the Yidden created the Egel, and more subtly in the Targum HaTorah Yevonis, when the Torah was translated into Greek, that it can lead to something which is not full achtas of Hashem. Al derech zeh, that's noch mehr bedakas, even to a more subtle degree in Torah Gufa, even within learning Torah itself, b'negei the machlokes Shammai or Beis Shammai v'Hillel or Beis Hillel. So here as well, if you understand the difference between Shammai and Hillel, we'll understand why this is similar to the inyan of the Egel, if we see what Hillel represents and what Shammai represents. So the Rabbi explains as follows: says Yidua, it's known as Shammai Ubei Shammai is Sharshai Mimidas Agvura Din. Shammai, what is the shayrish of his neshama? What does his way of learning represent? Gvura and Din. Judgment and harshness and more stringencies. On Hillel, or Beis Hillel, is Mimidas HaChesed. His neshama came from the attribute of chesed, kindness, generosity, and so on, rachmim, or mercy. On the far is bechlal, so therefore we find that generally Beishamai l'chumre, Beishamai is the one that's stringent, or Beis Hillel l'kula, and Beis Hillel is the one which is lenient. Now to explain deeper the difference between these two midas, chesed and gvura, as it relates to Achdus Hashem and the existence of the world. The chiluk zwischen midas hadin and midas chesed v'rachmim, the difference between the midah of din and gvura and the midah of chesed and rachmim, is bedugmas wie sagt im Medrash wegen chesed v'emes. It's similar to what the Medrash describes when it came to creation regarding the midah of chesed and emes. Chesed omar yivra. The attribute of chesed said that the world should be created. Ve'emes omar al yivra. And emes says that there's no room for creation. Das heißt, so what this Medrash is really saying is, Mitzad Midas Hadin is nitokin arte Welt. Midas Hadin says there's no room for an existence of a world. Mashenke Mitzad Midas Harachmim. But it's not so as far as the attribute of mercy is concerned. There is a room for the world being created. Now once the world is created, what comes out from this is as follows. As Mitzad Midas Hadin Herzachon den Bittel und der Schwere von Welt. What does Midas Hadin say? Midas Hadin says the world is a contradiction to godliness. It's a contradiction to the truth of Hashem. So we have to negate and break the world. That's what Midas Hadin demands. Midas HaChesed v'Rachmim is in Yonah. What does the midah of Chesed and Rachmim represent? What does it say? Adarab. It says on the contrary, zu mamshich sein elokos in Welt. You could draw down and reveal godliness within the existence of the world itself. So von dem ist verstandig, der Chiluk ba'oimik yeiser beteichen ha'anyanim zwischen midas ha'gvura und midas ha'chesed. So from this, we can understand on a deeper level what is really the difference between midas ha'gvura and midas ha'chesed as it relates to the existence of the world. Mitzad midas hadin, herzacham vi Welt is azach. From the attitude or from the outlook of midas hadin, so what sensed? That the world is something. Abgeteilt, ba'argashasai von elokus. And therefore, it's separated, at least in its experience, from godliness. So that's a major problem. Was the Rebbe darf sein, die Aveide und die Seide von Schwere und Bittel. So therefore, Midas Hadin, which sees the world as an entity and as a problem, at least in its experience, so what's the solution? So you have to break the world, you have to negate the world. Mitzad midas hachesed was mis mamshech elokos in Welt, but midas hachesed, which is about bringing and revealing the truth of the Eibishter within the existence of the world itself. Vert hert verkehrt. So what's sensed in the world is actually the opposite. As Welt is bekoyach umedarfes megale sein miyuchad mit elokos. That the world potentially, and this is something you have to work on revealing, is totally really unified with Hashem. The world is not a problem. It's not a contradiction to Hashem. The world itself is part of Hashem, is unified with Hashem. The far darf man ton und oifton in Welt. What you have to do and what you have to accomplish is all within the existence of the world. Megala sein in ir elokos, to reveal within the existence of the world itself that it's godliness, not by breaking it. Now, b'shas is in dort zwei Möglichkeiten. So when you have two different options, tzemach sein, or the mekel sein, whether to be stringent and to stay away from things in the world, or to be lenient and to engage with things in the world, is Beishamai l'chumr. So Beishamai's approach is like Gvura, which sees the world as something which threatens the unity of Hashem. The world is a problem. So therefore, Absheden is a von Inyan and von Welt. You got to separate from matters in the world. Beis Hillel l'kula. Beis Hillel is lenient about this. What's the lenience here? Mevara zayin u'mezach zayin chelke ba'olam. It's not that Hillel is less afraid about what may happen if a person could come to be Oived and Aved. Adarabah, Hillel says that in the existence of the world itself, you have to interact and engage with the world because the world doesn't have to be looked at as a threat. Adarabah, the world itself is a lakos. You just have to work with it and reveal it and refine the world. Now, because the dakos kumtarei, so to a very subtle degree, what comes out from this is as mitzad midas hadin. If you take the approach of Shammai, of Midas Hadin, can a race come in behishtalshalos? It could come out, and this itself, it's only if it evolves, atnue von shtei reshuyos kaviyachol. Some kind of approach where you see two different powers here. There's sort of battle here. There's some kind of a problem with the existence of the world, which is a contradiction to the existence of the unity of Hashem. And therefore it's necessary to battle with the world. Because through this approach of Shammai, by being machmer, we're not revealing and unifying the actual world itself with godliness. It's only through the Aveda of Hillel that shows you how to reveal and refine the world itself, that it's completely unified with Hashem. So then, there's no battle here. Adarab, you're revealing how it's all godliness. So that's the true Achdus Hashem within the Metzius of the world itself. Und das ist der Vergleich von Oisei Hayayim, Hoye Hillel, Kofaf, Yeshev, Lefnei Shamek, Echad HaTalmidim, V'hoye Kasha L'Yisrael, Ki Yem Shenasa V'Yegal. So this is the connection of this day when Hillel is subdued in front of Beis Shammai or Shammai, and this is similar to the day that the Egel is created. If on this day the halacha is like Shammai. What this represents is that the approach of Din was stronger, and then the approach of Chesed and Rachmim hat me meide gehat. The concern here was that in the future they may make the mistake and also paskin like Shammai. Was vet behishtalshalos, and the Rebbe emphasizes behishtalshalos. So then, through different levels that could evolve and come out from this, can engeben an art of shteire shriyos bedakis dedakis, and to a very subtle degree, it may come out to an approach that there is another power in the world, there's an entity in the world which is not completely miyuchad with the Eibishter. Nor medaf milchama haben mevatel zaynes. The very fact that the approach of din is that there's an entity in the world that you have to fight and negate and break, so that the dakas could lead to an attitude where there is something other than Hashem himself. Obviously in the source, Shammai is saying the exact opposite. What Shammai is saying is that because the Eibishter is the absolute and only truth and only unity, so therefore anything else is, you have to negate and is non-existent. You have to just reject it. But from this could come out an attitude to say that the very fact that I have to fight and break this means that there's something that has some significance other than the Eibishter. So that is why we're comparing it to the day that the Egel was created. As the Rebbe explained before, the concept of the day that the Egel was created was that B'dakos, this was a day that there was a possibility to think that there's a memutza that has some significance that's not completely bottled to the Eibishter, that you can bring the Eibishter down through this entity. So similar over here, to a much more subtle degree, through the attitude of Shammai, through Midas HaGevurah, Behishtalshalos, it could bring this approach that there's a world that exists, and you have to have a milchama with this existence of the world. So now this brings us back to what happened over here, B'Poyel Mamish. What ended up happening with this day that they translated the Torah for Talmai, and also on this day that they passed like Shammai. Das is abinov, was die zwei Tag. So now all of this is the explanation regarding these 2 days. The Yom Shekosvul Talmai Melech Asateri Yevanis, and the Yom Vasfil Hoy Kofa V'Yochel Lefnei Shammai. So these 2 days, then in Kosher Ki Yom Shenasa B'Ya Egel, it's compared to the day the Egel was created to lead them Chashash. Only out of a concern because of what may subtly come out, something which is opposite of the absolute unity of Hashem. Lapayol is by them Targum Torah Liavanes, but what actually ended up happening when the Torah was translated into Greek? And also what happened from this day that Hillel sat subdued in front of Shammai. It did not lead to anything opposite of what Torah wants. Nitvi by dem Yom Asiyas Egel. Not like what ended up happening on the day that they made the Egel. V'yeshleima Yiseirim Mizu. And we could actually even take this a step further and say, Kishem v'biyom shenasa b'ya Egel. Just like on this day that they made the Egel, hat Aaron gesagt Chag LaShem Mocha, that it will be a celebration for the Eibishter tomorrow. Was Kipshute meint es as Oim soll das nutzen kideboy. If this will be utilized properly, can the von kommen an Chag. So this can be a celebration. Und Yavdu es HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they'll end up serving the Eibishter on an even higher level. Kanal, as the Rebbe explained already before. Is take azoi areis gekommen von dem Targum HaTorah Liavanis. This is what actually ended up happening when they translated the Torah into Greek. B'shas die Ayim Beizekenu haben mit Targum gewinnt die Torah l'Talmei HaMelech and nit called Sarto. They translated the Torah for Talmei HaMelech and they didn't translate it fully verbatim. Sie haben Mishane gewinnt, kame v'kame Devarim. They changed certain things. Aneubendig von Elikim, bara Bereshis, anstatt Bereshis bara Elikim. The first change they made was the order of putting the Eibishter's name first and not Bereshis bara Elikim. Is nicht nur herabgekommen, euch zu Sa'elam Achtus Hashem, wie das Wert gesagt beteide. So what this accomplished was that not only did they bring the unity of the Eibishter to be communicated here in this language to the Goyim, to see it and read it in Teire, nor says Gevarana Halacha, this actually resulted in an actual halacha as the einzige Sprach, was bemek schreiben svarim, Sefer Teire, the only language that you're allowed to write an actual Sefer Teire in is Biyavanis, is that language that they translated the Teire then for Talmei HaMelech. And says kasha likris by, if it's written in Greek, it's a proper Sefer Torah that you can read from it when you're reading B'tzibur, B'tamas Sayadayim V'cholo, all the specific halachas that apply specifically to a Sefer Torah, the Gzeira of Chazal, that if you touch a Sefer Torah, the hands become Tamei, also applies. It has the regular halachas of a Sefer Torah, which is the Shleimus HaBiror from the Ksav V'loshen Yavanis. This brought the full refinement of this language, meaning they brought down the Achtas of the Eibishter here into this actual language itself. So not only did it have the negative result, but it actually had a very positive effect, bringing the Achtas Hashem and the Birur into this language here. Similar, we could say regarding this day when Hillel sat like a student in front of Shammai, as nit nor is from them nit gekommen, as es soll bleiben ledoiris the halacha vishamai vishamai. That not only did this not have a negative effect, that in the future the halacha would then be like Shammai, nor das hat gepoilt euch bei Shammai and in from Kfir Bittel. Seeing the behavior of Hillel, this actually had an impact on Shammai themselves, or Bei Shammai, that they also had this Kfir and Bittel, that they were subdued and they would nullify themselves. V'yesh loymar, as the far is da, kama mekaimis, bas Bishamai l'kula. What this resulted in, what we find in many places, that Bishamai is also lenient, similar to the approach of Hillel. Where did this come from? From here, from this incident, when Shammai saw the attitude of Hillel, so this actually had a positive impact on Shammai themselves, that in certain places they also took the approach of Hillel to be lenient, which, as the Rabbi explained before, really means to engage with the world and reveal in the world itself the Achtas of the Eibishter. So since the words of tzaddikim live on and exist forever, and especially those matters that are in Torah, brought in Torah, which is eternal, is there fun move on. So what we understand from this is, so this that Aaron said regarding this day that they made the Egel on Shivasa B'Tammuz, and he said that this will be a celebration for the Yidden tomorrow. This will definitely be fulfilled. And this says clearly in the Arizal, in Divrei Aaron, that there's a big secret that's hinted here in the words of Aaron, as Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'hafcha yeshivasa b'tammuz l'yomtiv, that this very day will one day become a Chag Hashem, it will be transformed into a yomtiv instead of a fast day as it is today. V'nimtza ki Chag Hashem mocha be'etzem u'mocha zeh la'achaz man chulu. So it comes out that this very day will be a celebration for the Eibishter, and this happens machar, lasad lavi, when Mashiach comes. Yeshleimar as bepnimius. So we can say that on a deeper level is das der Chag was kommt heraus al yedei tshuva von Yidden nefasiyas egel. What this is referring to is the celebration that comes out through the fact that Yidden do tshuva for what happened with the egel. Was la'as lavai. That is nizgala werden. Then when Mashiach comes, this will be revealed. On achtus Hashem vet kumen begilui oich b'shayches gimel klippes atmeis. And we'll see the unity of the Eibishter in every place, in every entity, including in the lowest level of Klippe. As the Nitzaitzes Shebehem, the holy sparks even there, their Tachlis, Upnimius, Hakavana Shebehem, the purpose and the inner reason of why these Klippe were created, it'll all be transformed to absolute good, and it gets all elevated, all into holiness. That's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. That's the Chag Hashem Machar that will be fulfilled in Aaron HaKohen's words. So we can say that similar to this is it's when it comes to translating the Torah in all 70 languages in the later generations and now in our generation. Especially taking the well springs of the inner aspect of Torah, as it's known, the Frierdiker Rebbe placed a very big effort to translate also matters of the inner dimension of Torah into all 70 languages. So that those that don't have a relation and can't understand the Pnimiyas HaTorah in its original in Hebrew, or that are in Yiddish, or even to understand it in Yiddish, even they should be able to learn from the wellspring, from the inner dimension of Torah. What this accomplishes is it refines all these languages, not only the way it was done originally by Moshe Rabbeinu when the translation was alongside and together with Lashon HaKodesh, but each one of these languages as they are for themselves. Was noch mehr ist das durch herabtragen, die tiefe Inyanim ve'esbeinen von Achtes Hashem, shebeteires Achsidis in L'shayin Kolam V'am. And this is accomplished even more so by bringing down the deepest explanations that there is in Teires Achsidis about the unity of Hashem, bringing it into every language. And this brings the refinement and the elevation of these 70 nations themselves. This brings closer and hastens the coming of Mashiach, when all the nations of the world will all be transformed, and to have one Safa Brura, to all call to the name of Hashem in unison. So then these days, in this time period of the year, will all be translated into days of joy and to a yontiv, on the scene from the Yemei Ben Absarim. And the conclusion of these days, which began on the day of Shavasa B'Tamuz, which is on Tisha B'Av, V'Zayna Yom Tov Gadol, will be a very great Yom Tov, B'Karev Mamish, B'Bias, Mashiach Tzidkenu.